Namaha. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hare Om Tat Sat. So, as we have been discussing, there was a long gap. Apologies for that, and we're going to restart it today. So far we were dealing with, uh, and so far we are dealing with the Panchabhuta Viveka. We have finished the Mahabhuta Viveka. Now we are dealing with Panchabhuta Viveka. Why are we dealing with it? I have discussed that in the last class, that this particular Atma is so subtle, it doesn't appear except through a few adjuncts or upadhis, without a few wrappers or branding instrumentalities. We do not directly see it. We see the Atma, we address it through different envelopes or covers through which it appears. And in the first section, we have already refuted the argument that Atma cannot be the physical body. If you look at Tattvabodha, the key sentence there is Panchakoshatitaha avastatraya shakshi. We have three states. We have the waking state, we have the dream state, and we have the deep sleep state or Shusupti avastha. The Atma is present even in deep sleep state, where the mind is not present, the senses are silent, the intellect is silent. Atma is always there. And that is how we have to say that this avastatraya shakshi, one of the powerful arguments they have given, and we are going to repeat it after in the next class. It will come the Anandamaya Kosha, acceptance and refutation, how the Anandamaya Kosha is closest to the Atma, and yet it's not Atma. The technique in Advaita Vedanta is Adhyaropa and Apavada. Adhyaropa Vadabhyang Nisprapancham Prapanchate. We do not know the Atma is Nisprapancha. How do we explain it? So we will make a few assumptions. In school, we are doing mathematics. In mathematics, what let that be X. We would have a presumption. Then we will look at different possibilities. As a kind of a trial and error method, we call it Adhyaropa and Apavada. We'll assume the Atma to be X, and then with arguments, we'll say, no, it cannot be X. Then let's see what is X1. These are the Panchakoshas, and that's being refuted one by one. Now, somebody might argue, and it's a very powerful argument, this is to do with all theories of the self in the West, for example. If you pay attention to so many philosophical theories that they have, Atma kone, who are you? Who am I? If I ask, make onu, I'm an Indian, or I'm a male person, or I'm a student of Vedanta, I'm so and so with name and form, right? These are these things. Sometimes we are referring to ourselves as, I'm somebody who is a very tall person. So there is an identification with the physical features of the body. But the physical features of the body is not the self. Why so? It's refuted in different grounds. One of these is that when we were a child, or we were within the mother's womb, did we know we are boy, girl? What's our height? What's our name? We didn't have any of these. We still existed. But the Lokayatikas or the Charvak Matavadis, the philosophers, they are basically materialists in the Indian tradition. And the book, apparently, which is written by Charvak, is referred to in the Sarvadarshana Sangraha as Brihaspati Sutrani. So his name is supposed to be Brihaspati. It's not Devaguru Brihaspati, but perhaps there was a Brahmin intellectual who was a very hedonistic, pleasure-oriented, and a materialistic person. A lot of people give a lot of importance to him, and they think that he was very democratic because he refuted all with the Vedic authority. The Vedas are supreme source of knowledge. He refuted. Why to read them? So for him, because there is no possibility for us to have any discussion on the self, because absolutely there is no possibility whatsoever that we can have any discussion on the self. distinct from the physical body. If I don't have the physical body, what do you talk about self? Where does this self stay if the body is dead? This is a very positivistic, materialistic argument. The Vedanta refuted it. We saw that in the verse number third. That look here, this body has to be Atma. Why so? Because you see, only with food this body grows. Whatever identity we have is because of the Annamaya Kosha. Annani eva vardhate. You take food, then only you grow. If you do not take any food and you start fasting continuously, maybe 90 days, after that, the body falls apart. So, deha sonamyo natma prak chodham tad abhavataha. Now, the second half of the sloka refutes this presumption. Now, in the Taittiriya Upanishad, these koshas, the seeds, they're hiding, they're kind of wrappers. That's why the word kosha is used to refer to how Atma appears in the garb of the body, in the garb of the mind, the garb of our prana sakti, our vital airs. We will discuss the vital air today. But that is not Atma. Atma appears in the garb of X, Y, Z, but is different from them. That is what Vedanta is going to explain to us. First, it refutes that the Annamaya Kosha, yes, it is the foundation. So, in the first meditation, it says, you meditate as Brahma, Anna Brahma. For the uninitiated, in the Chandogya Upanishad, when Virochana, yeah, and Indra, Rakshasa Raja and Deva Raja, they both went to Prajapati. Prajapati is the father of both Asuras and Suras, Daityas and Adityas. So he went there, and they had a question: what is the self? And first, what he did, he told them, "Look here, do you know what is Atma? You just go and look at your face in a water surface. Whatever you see is your Atma." And they were wearing beautiful golden ornaments, jewelry, because they were royal people, and they went and looked at it, and Virochana became very happy. He said, so this is the Atma. So this Dehatma Buddhi, which Brahma was trying to mislead both of them, test their intelligence, he accepted and he went off. Indra didn't go back. He did not return. He, in fact, came back to Brahmaji saying, you have cheated us. Why? Because look, sometimes the physical seat or the physical frame we have has diseases. Sometimes it has one eye, sometimes it cannot hear. How can it be Atma, which is supposed to be perfect? It has so many ailments, it's going to fall apart, it's going to die after some time. It verily cannot be Atma. Because when I'm asleep, is the physical body of any use to me? Yeah, it's there, but I'm not using it. I'm not using my physical body. I am in the physical body. He thinks about this question, then goes back to Prajapati. Prajapati immediately says, okay, you have to do a meditation for 32 years, be a brahmachari here. Then he would again explain that. That is how a total of 105 years is spent with Prajapati to understand the secret of what the Atma is. So here the Annamaya Kosha is being refuted as Atma with solid argument saying that, look, before our birth, there must be something. There must be a causal element. Without a cause, you cannot have an effect, right? So we got a body. Somebody is very attractive. Somebody born in a rich family. Somebody, this is a little controversial from the standpoint of the human rights and equality and stuff like that, because they believe that this karma siddhanta can be misused, misinterpreted to justify inequality and injustice in society. Somebody is born rich because he had done punya. Somebody is born poor, therefore he has done a lot of papa. So you are in a way justifying some kind of exploitation of the poor people. This is one argument against the karma siddhanta. I'm just alerting you to that. But the karma siddhanta is not intending to justify the status quo in society. It is trying to tell us that the reality of who we are cannot be limited to this life. The materialists accept this life is the only reality we have. But as a spiritual school of thought, he said, no, the self is much larger than that. How do you explain that there are two brothers born in the same family, same material conditions, one behaves in a different from the other? How do you explain that two siblings born in a super rich family or super poor family having different consequences in their life? There is some past karma. This karma siddhanta is not a principle to be seen as something which is limiting and binding us, but something which provides us a context for exploring our inner potential. We need not reduce it to a restricting conditionality, but a context which provides us with an understanding of where and what we can do and realize our inner potential. But in order to even go there, first we have to accept that this physical body is not possible without, according to the Vedantic argument, is not possible without a causality, without some causal element. And what is that causal element? That causal element has to be there was someone who is being born to go through a set of actions. So he was there was a karta, but he was not physical because the body wasn't there. Now, if we die and we say that this is all, then there is a concept of sanchita karma. And sanchita karma cannot be experienced in one life because that karma is a kind of a database of millions and millions of lives. How can you exhaust it in one life? Only through Atmajnana can this Sanchita karma be nullified. It's like completely formatted. Only Prarabdha karma will continue giving some results. The Sanchita and Agami karmas will become ineffective. One will lose its importance, the other one will not affect you. Once a person becomes Atmajnani, he doesn't have karta, bhukta, buddhi, and therefore there is no limitation anymore on him, and he is liberated here and now, no swarga, nowhere. Advaita Vedanta says Satya Mukti here itself. Therefore, he is saying, Na atma prakcha urdhvam tat abhavataha. That sarira abhavataha. Before birth, the body wasn't there. After birth, the body would not be there. However, as per the Shrutis, and there are several other statements and testimonies in different texts which sort of give an indication that the Atma travels. There is something which is beyond this physical seas or beyond this physical frame. Now we'll go to the verse number 4. Evam muktya dehasya anatatmam pradarsha. With arguments, dehasya of the body, anatmatvam is not atma, it's not atmatvam, apitu anatmatvam. So this body is not self. Pradarsha sastrataha api tat sadayati purveti. Now sastrataha. So he is giving certain arguments as to why certain scriptural knowledge. And he's now sort of taking towards the exegesis to give us some theoretical explanation based on the scriptural information which is available and the arguments which are available to make sense of the argument that the body cannot be Atma. Purva janma nyasannetas janma sampadayet katham bhavi janma nyasan karma bhunjiti yaha sanchitam na bhunjiti hasanchitam. This is what I have already mentioned. This is the sloka. Purva janmani asan eta janma sampadayat katham. If there was no purva janma, there was no papa punya. So there is no contextuality available. If there is a God, he would give you a body. He will give the jivatma a body. On what basis? If there is no examination system, there is no evaluation system. If you want to admit students to the postgraduate program, but there is no evaluation system, there was no undergrad courses. There were no undergrad courses. On what basis do you admit students in the postgrad courses, whatever programs you have? There has to be some evaluation. There has to be a person who has gone through the undergrad course. He has got a degree. He has got a grade, a few comments and recommendations, and then he applies to the post graduation program and is admitted. Now, for us to come here, there must be something which provides a causal context. Etat janma sampadayat katham. How do you explain as to why this janma happened? There must be a cause. And that cause is our purva janma. Whatever we have done, papa punya, as it's God here is like a supercomputer where all the information about good and bad we have done is kind of processed, and some of it is extracted as a encashment of our past karmas, which is called prarabdha. And prarabdha means it starts giving result as soon as we are born, and it will continue to give us result till we are physically dead. Sanchita, it's a load of negative and positive karma still there, is unlimited. The only way to get rid of it is to format it through Atmajnana. And Agami karma or Kriyamana karma is what is going to happen through us during this life. Once you have Atmajnana, beyond that, whatever you are doing it only externally, you are doing it only formally, you are doing it only phenomenally, you are doing it only superficially. In what sense? You are not involved in any of these. And that is explained in a beautiful way in the Bhagavad Gita, in the fifth chapter, that you are doing everything, you are nowhere there. Because you are doing whatever karma you are doing, Atma Suddhai, for purification of your Antakarna. That is at the Vividisa stage where you want to know the self. Once you are already established in the truth, there is no activity. And yet, if you are a woman, your children will come to you for food, right? Now, for example, look at Meera. She was given to Lord Krishna. She was self realized, isn't it? She was still wearing a sari. She was still having people walking with her because she was a young, beautiful woman. How do you explain it? Bhagavan says, no, no, it's because of Swabhava. The God doesn't do any good or bad. God doesn't get anything done. Jivatma doesn't do anything. After that, it's Swabhav, the Prakriti. She's got a female body, so she dresses up in a certain way. And similarly, a person becomes Atmajnani, the body is irrelevant. Would he throw all his clothes and move around naked, and he'll be arrested? Bhamakshepa was arrested a couple of times by the British police. They were released him because they realized that he's a madcap and he was God intoxicated. And they, of course, he was also used to also consume alcohol, but he was God intoxicated. They realized it and they saw some occult powers he had and they released him. They forgave him because he was kind of too spiritual for him to be put behind the bars. And there are so many stories, I'm not getting into it. But if you move around naked, of course, the giants, the Digambaras, I have seen the women wear clothes, but the men are completely naked and they walked to Badrinath. They do darshanam. Four of them are walking barefoot, no dresses. Very challenging. It's not so easy because it's very cold and they just walk like that. But generally, you are not denying the phenomenal reality of our body. You're consuming some food, you're consuming water, you're going to sleep. But that is not karma of the Atma. That is what is happening at the level of this Karya Karana Sanghata, this body mind complex. The body mind complex is not Atma. Atma appears as if it is the body mind complex. So Purva Janmani Asan Eta Janma Sampadayat Katham. Bhavi Janmani Asana Karma Na Bhunjita Iha Sanchitam. And then if you deny the existence of a future birth, future life, if you refute it, there's no possibility. What do you do with the load of Sanchita Karma? You accept there will be Punarjanma. Because otherwise somebody will say, what is the point of doing Vedanta Chintana? What is the point of doing Atma Chintana? We are anyway liberated after this birth. Just imagine there are two ways to look at it. There are certain sociologists who would say that this kind of a religious thinking was intended to provide social control. Why? Because you'll be afraid, you will try to abide by law, your morality, social norms, respect for others, compassion, kindness. Why? Because there is a boss there, God, whether a Christian God or Islamic God or Hindu God, but there's someone there and who's going to punish you. You have another, but of the Christians don't believe in afterlife. They believe afterlife above. You go above, but they don't talk about reincarnation. The Buddhists accept reincarnation. Hindus accept reincarnation. You're going to be reborn. And that's a very powerful argument they say, without which you cannot make sense and life will become completely um, without any anchor, and you can do anything and get away, in that sense. Of course, Christianity has its own way of explaining without talking about reincarnation. Let's look quickly at the commentary and go to the next sloka. Yadi deha eva atma. If you assume that this body is atma, bhabitum arhati tari purva janmani asan na vidyamana. This body was not there in the last life. There was some other body, if you at all had, but this body wasn't there. Asan etat janma deham katham sampade. Without any physicality, without any causality, how did you get this body from where? What are the causal element of it? Ataha deha utpatehe purvam. Therefore, before this body came into being, kenachit karanena bhavitavyam. You have to imagine there was some causality. There was a cause as to why we got this human body. Evam etas janmani sanchitena karmana sampaditasya phalasya bhokta kasyana karta bhavi janmani asana iha sanchitam karmam na bhunjita. And then if you don't accept that there is a future birth, then what happens to the load of the sanchita karma? How do you exhaust it? There has to be somebody to spend it, the karma papa punya. Ata kashchana karta bhavi janmani avashyakaha. Therefore, there has to be some karta who will also exist beyond the fall of this body at death. Yadi deha eva atma. But then if you accept this body itself is atma, dehasya eva kartutva, therefore this body is the karta, tasya bhavi janmani abhavat kova phalabhukta. But this body will, if you say this is the atma, this body will perish. It will become old, there's an accident, or there's some disease and illness, and this body dies. If this is the Atma, then who will remain as Karta? Body is gone. So what is the platform for the Atma? Sya tathacha deha atiriktasya atmana abhave. If you don't accept that there is an Atma other than this physical seed, kritahana akrita abhyagama prasanga iti bhavaha. This is the most powerful argument. It's called kritahani akrita abhyagama. If there is no system of evaluation and God creates the sansara, this traditional argument is how will he make somebody beautiful, handsome, rich, smart, intelligent, somebody not so well, having a lot of raga dvesha. Yeah, we had all kinds of people, right? We have all kinds of American presidents. We had a Woodrow Wilson who wanted global peace, talked about multilateralism, isn't it? That's why we had League of Nations. And then we have also other people who want to destroy it. So how does God decide what qualities to give to each person? So has to have, it's called kritahani. So means you have done some crimes in the last life and you'll get away with it. You have done a lot of punya and that punya will go to someone else. Your papa will go to someone else. So there's going to be a lot of chaotic consequences out of it. It's called kritahani. What you have achieved is wasted. Akrita abhyagama. What you haven't done, you're getting result for it. For someone else's crimes and papas, you are being punished. And that's not fair. There should be some kind of a correspondence between the good and bad we have performed in our last lives with what we experience in this life. That correspondence can be understood only if we accept that, yeah, there is some soul, there is some kind of a spirit or whatever way, the Atma, which actually transmigrates. But remember, even this transmigration will be refuted later. Advaita Vedanta gives you certain intermediate hypothetical answers in order to refute it ultimately, to take us to that absolute Sachidananda Swarupa Atma, where there is no transmigration, nothing. These are all intermediate level explanations. Okay? Pranamaya koshasya swarupam anatmatmam cha aha punna iti. Then, after the physical body, what comes? Then pranamaya kosha. As per Tattvabodha and other texts, how the pranamaya kosha is constituted, they say it's the pancha pranas and pancha karmendriyas. Vak pani paya payupassa. These are the five karmendriyas: ability to speak, and vak, ability to speak, and then hands doing things, pada walking around, payu upasya is for flushing out the excreta and for progeny, for procreation. These are the karma indriyas we have. Jnanendriya is the five gates through which we acquire knowledge. Ability to see, ability to hear, ability to taste, ability to smell, ability to feel through touch. These are the jnanendriyas. The karmendriyas and pancha pranas, prana, pana, vyana, udana, samana, these together, these 10 elements, they constitute what is called the pranamaya kosha. The pranamaya kosha, please understand, only the annamaya kosha has a physical seat, is thula. Pranamaya kosha, manomaya kosha, vijnanamaya kosha, and anandamaya kosha, they are in the realm of the subtlety. They are not physically available. They are not physically available to the eye. The Annamaya kosha is made out of the Panchakrita Panchabhuta, whereas the other, the Pranamaya, and all these are out of the Apanchakrita, the subtle Panchabhutas, and therefore they don't have a physical appearance. Okay? Let's look at this, and then we would also look at the larger arguments. Punnadehe valam yachan nakhyanam yaha pravartakaha vayuh pranamayo nasa vatma chaitanya varjanat. Now, pranamaya kosha is Atma. Okay. And this is, first I will read into it, but before that, maybe we can do a little elaborate discussion. We come back to this. Why is the pranamaya kosha ever imagined as Atma? First, we have to see it. First, there is a misunderstanding. What caused that misunderstanding? We need to unravel it, and then we'll graduate as to why that misunderstanding is there and how to refute it. Both. Now, I can do either way. I can also quickly run through this commentary and look at the larger philosophical argument. Yatoho vayu valam jachan. Because this vayu, prana vayu, we are breathing, right? That's how we are alive. This physical frame sustains because of the breathing, the life force we have. Vyana rupena pushtim. Then kalapayan akshanam indriyanam pravartakaha sanchalako dehe punna apadamastakam vyaptaha sa vayuhu pranamayaha tannamakaha kosha bhavati. Pranamaya kosha is called. Pancha pranas plus the karmendriyas together, this is called the pranamaya kosha. And how many types of pranas are there? These pranas are prana, pana, samana, udana, and vyana. Okay. Now, what is prana? They say that, okay, it's the breathing, forward and inward breathing that we do. It's somewhere throat to the diaphragm. It's there, and it's responsible for our inhaling, our respiration system, eating food, and all these that happen between throat and the diaphragm. Apanavayu is below the navel. Okay, it's mostly around the pelvis. Apanavayu. Adhoguchati, iti apanavayu. All the time go down, that downward, outward air. So when there is apanavayu, means if a person has flatulence, there's a lot of gastritis, it's because of disturbance in that, because of apanavayu. What does it do? It flushes out the waste, urine and stool. It is also responsible for reproduction. Okay. In women, it's also responsible for menstruation. In men, it's also responsible for the sexual activity, because there's apanavayu, this domain of the apanavayu. And then samanavayu is something which is balancing in nature. Where is it located? And the samanavayu somewhere operates around the navel, Manipura chakra, and it's mostly controlling the samanavayu, the digestive fire. Okay, so it governs things like your metabolism, digestion, assimilation of nutrients, samanavayu. And then you have udanavayu. Udanavayu is something which is all the time upward moving between throat and the head. You can imagine its existence. These are all imaginations, because physically you can't find them. It regulates speech and memory. So if your udanavayu is in a state of disturbance, may your memory fails. Okay, so then creativity, creative expression, ability to stand, upper body functions, everything. Sneezing, coughing, especially vomiting, is kind of udana vayu controls it. And then you have ultimate one is the vyana vayu. It pervades, it's diffusive in nature, it pervades throughout the body, the Vyana Vayu. What does it do? Now it circulates, it is responsible for blood circulation, movement, and the activities of the nerve centers and movement of limbs, everything. It connects. So it's the Vyana is kind of a coordinator Vayu. It coordinates with all other four Vayus also. That is the interesting part of it. Okay, so that is why it's mentioning that Vayu Jata Valam Yachan. Yachan means having given. What does it? It gives that strength. If you breathe, then only you have strength. Vyana Rupena, it spreads throughout the body. Pushtim, Kalapayan, it gives you that nutrition, gives you that strength. Akshanam, Akshi means eyes, but eyes are a kind of upalakshana for all the indriyas, all the sense organs. Indriyanam pravartakaha. Without air, without prana, all other indriyas are useless. And therefore, in yoga, in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad and other places, when the mind is too disturbed, you have anxiety issues, you have emotional instability. If you talk to someone who is a counselor, who is going to give you some good advice as to how to deal with panic attacks, what does he do? He says, you just quietly breathe. Slow breathing, slow, wrong breathing kind of brings down the movements in the mind and the disturbances in the sense organs, because the prana is the boss of all other indriyas. There's a beautiful dialogue in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad where who is superior? There was a fight between the Jnanendriyas. The eye is the superior, or the touch, the skin, the tvacha, that is the superior, or Rashanendriya, or Shravanendriya. So they went to Prajapati. Prajapati said, look, why don't you one by one leave the body? Whosoever leaves and the body cannot sustain anymore is the boss. So first the Darshanindriya left, the person became blind, but he survived. After 1 year, he came back. And then the Sotrendriya, Shravanendriya left. He became deaf, but still he survived. Then, he left one by one. So he lost his smell, like in Corona we did, and he lost his touch, he lost his ability to taste food. He lost all that, but he survived. And ultimately, Prana wanted to leave the body. When Prana was about to leave the body, all the Indriyas chased him, got hold of him, said, sorry, we realize our mistake. You are the king. We are going to worship you. So Prana is superior to all other elements. It provides energy to all. The physical seat, Annamaya Kosha, spatially. Therefore, it is superior. The Pranamaya Kosha is superior, subtler, more important, and closer to the Atma Tattva. And therefore, we are tempted to confuse the Pranamaya Kosha as Atma. Savayu Pranamaya Tannamakaha. That Atma is called Tannamaka Kosha Bhavati. Nanu Pranamaya Atma. Therefore, Pranamaya Atma is Pranamaya Kosha. Tasyeva Janmasthiti Laya Hetutvat. Therefore, we have to argue that Pranamaya Kosha is Atma, because without breathing, you're not going to have a child who is born, or he's going to sustain, or he's going to die. Everything is death, loss of breath, death. Breathing continues, you're alive. The baby is born, it's not breathing, it's stillborn. You abandon the baby. So it's the center of it, and therefore that is Atma. Tasyeva janmasthiti laya hetutvat. Prana eva is the cause. The prana vayu is the cause of your birth, your sustenance, and your death. Pranavayu yoshina garvam pravishta retva ghanobhavam apadya pindadi kramena deham utpadayati. How is the baby born? He's saying, look here. A person breathes, he has this pranavayu. And because of his pranavayu, he is able to copulate. Because even for that, you have this apanavayu, which is active, end of the day, so that he can have sexual activity. And then there is this semen, which is ejaculated, goes to the uterus of the mother, and then it takes the form of a zygote. The embryo is formed. He's saying pindadi kramena dehamutpadayati, and that becomes the physical siddharnamaya kosha in which the baby takes shape. Swasakosha dvara pranavayu sanchalam eva ayuriti uchyate. How long is going to live? We say ayu means what? How much is your ability to breathe? For how long can you breathe? That is what is ayu. Prana hi bhutanam ayuhu, Taittiriya Upanishad 2.3. See, these are intermediate insights available in the Taittiriya Upanishad, and also there is a discussion in the Prashna Upanishad. And therefore, there's a temptation to confuse the prana as the Atma. The context is given here as to why we might confuse the prana maya kosha as Atma. तद उत्क्रांतिरेव मरणमिति लोक प्रसिद्धि, and this pranavayu उड़ जाता है, this pranavayu goes away, lifts itself, utkramanti. Whenever it leaves the body, then we are dead. Then he's saying loka prasiddhi tatha eva bhrugur vyajana. There is a discussion between Bhrugu and Varuna. Bhrugu is asking questions, and Varunaji is giving answers and refuting them. First, he talks about Annamaya Kosha, meditate on it, and then he goes back and he says, no, no, you meditate on the Pranamaya Kosha. Therefore, he's saying, Pranadhyeva khalu imani bhutani jayante. It's out of the prana shakti, that prana vayu, pranadhyeva, pranadhyeva khalu imani bhutani jayante. All these bhuta varga jivas are born out of it. Pranena atmani jivanti, jatani jivanti. Whosoever is born lives, sustains, continues to exist. How? Because of breathing. Pranena jatani jivanti. Whosoever is born survives, continues to live because of his pranavayu. Pranam pratya visamvidhanti. And then, end of the way, when the prana is withdrawn, he dies. That's 3.3. Chet na ityaha neti, but that's not true. That's not true. Why so? He's saying Vayu pranamayo nasavatma chaitanya vardana. The pranavayu doesn't have chaitanya. What is the best example? Why chaitanya is not chaitanya? That is a powerful argument, and I'm giving, and you are refuting it. Why so? Give me a good argument. Yeah, and the good argument which we are talking about is like this. You see, the pranavayu is there when you're asleep, isn't it? You're breathing. Yeah, we are breathing. We all breathe. And then, is that your Atma? Why you don't know? Is there Chaitanya? A person is in coma. Is he not breathing? He is breathing. And is there Chaitanya? Is there consciousness? Yeah, there is some consciousness. What is the nature of that consciousness? If you're talking about consciousness as awareness of an external reality, there is no consciousness. If you say consciousness is a reality which defines the existence of the person, because who is controlling the inner motor activity, all the organs are being coordinated, the brain is still active. You can argue there is Chaitanya. In itself, the breathing is jada. Think about it. He's saying that this is jada, number one. Number two, this is also vikaritvat. This is also vikari. Why? Sometimes you have swasa. What's your strength? You have, during Corona, we started having this exasperation, walking a few steps. You loss of breath. Atma, nowhere in any text says that Atma undergoes so many modifications. But the pranavayu and its consequences, the pranamaya kosha does undergo a lot of modifications. Sometimes it's strong, sometimes it's weak, sometimes it's able to exert the force which is required for the annamaya kosha to do different activities, sometimes it's not so. So that means there are a lot of vikaras, and there are a lot of signs that this cannot be Atma, because this is not finally the Atma Tattva, because Atma is avikari. Atma doesn't undergo any kind of vikara, whereas the pranamaya kosha does undergo a lot of thing. And number two, it is not chetana, it is not consciousness. Pranavayu is there, it's like a physical activity, it goes on. A person is in coma, it will go on, but you cannot equate it with consciousness. Okay. And number three, you say my breath is stable. You're saying prana is Atma. The Vedanti will say, okay, good, I got no problem. So he will take you on the path of Drik Drishya Viveka by Shankaracharya. Atma is drashta. Everything else, whatever is seeing is Atma. Whatever you are seeing, whatever is Drishya Varga, that is Anatma. Whatever you see is different from you, isn't it? Okay. Sometimes you say that right now I'm experiencing breathlessness. You see this? So you are able to see your pranamaya kosha, its existence in a certain shape or certain mode. You are saying that my pranamaya kosha is very weak and I have to strengthen it through pranayama. Some yoga, yogi guru, advises you. Okay. Now he gives you kind of a acceptance that you can do it. That itself, that itself is now uh, giving you a strong argument that anything which can be an object of perception, there is a perceiver. That perceiver should be considered to be the Atma, not the Pranamaya Kosha. See, there is an object of my knowledge. Who is the knower? The object of my knowledge cannot be the knower. So if you are being able to talk about Pranamaya Kosha, you are being able to talk about Pranavayu. That means the Pranavayu is not you. You are seeing something other than you. Okay. So this confusion comes out of different statements. In the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, in the Taittiriya Upanishad, Prashna Upanishad, there are a few statements which sort of tempt us to believe so. However, it is not so. Even these Ayurveda also glorifies this pranavayu. However, these are all refuted ultimately. What are the things? Prana lacks intrinsic consciousness. It's not Chaitanya Varga. On its own, it doesn't have Chaitanya. You are aware of it, you are identifying with, it's a different thing. And number two, that it is conditional. Prana is conditional. Pranavayu is not there. A person dies, pranavayu is not there. He falls ill, pranavayu is very weak. Okay, it's conditional, it's not infinite. And finally, there is a scriptural negation. This is not the final truth. Neti neti. Therefore, and there are a few logical flaws in it. So, first thing is prana is in Drishya Varga. Prana is a vikari, undergoes modifications. Number two, it's not in Chetana Varga. And finally, even the Upanishads and other Vedantic texts refute that prana is the ultimate reality. It is an intermediate statement, which in order for you to be able to meditate on the prana as Atma, for a certain siddhis, for a certain intermediate benefits, you can do it. That meditation is fine, but that is not going to liberate you. Liberation is possible only when we become aware of who we are, when we have proper Atma Tattva. Okay? So, next, go to the next verse now. Now, having refuted this Pranamaya Kosha as Atma, we're going to look at the Manomaya Kosha. After you have the Annamaya Kosha, then Pranamaya Kosha. What is the Manomaya Kosha? As per the teachings, Manomaya Kosha is constituted by the Manas plus the Apanchikrita Panchabhutas. After this, the Sattvic Angsha. You have everything has Trigunatmika, right? So out of the Prakriti, you have Sattvika, the body is out of the Tamasic Angsha, and the Apanchikrita Panchamahavata, out of the Rajasic Angsha, you have the Pranamaya Kosha. Out of the Sattvic Angsha, you both have Manomaya Kosha and Vijnanamaya Kosha. The difference being that this Manomaya Kosha, these the Panchabhutas are undivided. And out of their Sattvic Angsha, which is very subtle, which is knowledge oriented, okay, and happiness oriented, you have these Manomaya Kosha. Manas plus 5 Jnanendriyas. 5 Jnanendriyas are born out of the Apanchikrita. Okay, so for example, each the Manas, mind itself, is out of the collective of the Panchabhutas in a subtle form, apanchakrita. Shukshma bhutas together, mind is given, mind is born, manas. And then from the Panchabhutas, out of each Panchabhuta, one Gyanendriya is born. So, because Akasha Tattva, you have the Shravanendriya, because Akasha is the platform for containing sound. And then Vayu Tattva, you have Tvacha, the Sparshendriya, and Ghanendriya Prithvi Tattva, Rasanendriya from Jala Tattva, and the ability to see from the Teja, Agni Tattva. These are from the subtle sattvic anshas of the subtle Panchabhutas, not the Sthula Panchabhutas. Because these Indriyas is not these physical elements you call as eye or ears. These are Indriya Golakas. These are the is kind of encashment of that Indriya Devata. It's a house for the Indriya Devata. Indriya is Atindriya is subtle. You cannot see it. These Indriyas are subtle forces, and they are out of the subtle Panchabhutas. Five Indriyas have correspondingly their causes in five Panchabhutas, subtle, Sukshma Bhutas. Manas is a together of all these. Why? Because when you are asleep, you are not using any of these, yet you can smell. You have a smell, you see a rose in your dream and you think it's a lovely smell. How do you do that? Means Manas is born out of all the Pancha Sukshma Bhutas together. When Manas plus these Gyanendriyas together is called the Manomaya Kosha. Now we are discussing about that. Manomaya Swarupam Tasya Anatmatmam Cha Achaste Ahamiti. Why the Manomaya Kosha cannot be Atma? Okay. Why Manomoyo Kosha can be Atma? First, you have to understand that. Ahantam mamatam dehe gehadau chakaroti yaha kamadya avastaya bhranto nasavatma manomaya. What is that Manomaya Kosha? First he's saying, look, mind is everything. Where are you? That is the argument as to why Manomaya Kosha should be treated as Atma. Ahantam mamatam dehe. You have this aham buddhi nidya. I'm this body. And mamata. This is my body. I am the body. This is my. And mamatam gehadu. This house is mine. This car is mine. This is my family. This is my husband. This is my children. Isn't it? This is my college. This is my company. Karoti yaha is because of this mind you are able to do it. Yeah. You have this ahanta and mamata. Atmaka sankalpa vikalpatmakam manaha. You have sankalpa and vikalpa. Should I do it? Shouldn't I do it? All kinds of. Now, the answer is that kamadi avastaya bhrantaha. You have kama, lobha, moha, kama, krodha, madamashwarya. You have these modulations of your mental states, because of which you see something as yours. And there is this Carl Jung, the great philosopher, who is hugely popular these days because of the spiritual implications of whatever he says. Uh, he wrote several books, some very powerful. And in these, if you read, he argues that whenever we actually try to say that I am in love with that person, you may not have anything to do with that person. You don't even know him or her. What you know is a certain conception of that person that you have built in your mind, and then you are associating yourself in a habitual manner. Now, you actually get into the life of that person, he is a different person. So, obviously, you know more about him, and then you're heartbroken that this person is a cheat. No, but he was a different person. You had constructed a story about him, and you idolized him or her, and then established a relationship. And then you discover the whole person, you know more about him, and the more that you know about him is not fitting into the particular picture you have constructed about him, so therefore you feel cheated. Now what he's trying to say, kamadi avastaya bhrantaha. During this cognitive states, these emotional connections that we establish, sometimes you are ready to do anything for a person, right? Some person claims he is in love with something, could be his company, could be his cricket team or anything. People become very emotional. Politically, they get divided. They break families on political lines. I mean, that's one of the cruelest truths of our times, that many families are breaking because the husband and the wife have diametrically opposite political views. They fight with each other. They don't understand the value of the richness of the interpersonal relations, so they are confusing it. So, this ahankara, the manas, is doing all this because it's influenced by different emotional states. It's bhrantaha. That's not Atma. He says, I am this, I am the body, I am this, I am that. That's out of a misunderstanding. Na aso Atma manomaya, and therefore that manomaya kosha cannot be Atma. That is what he's trying to say. We have 5 minutes, and I think I can run through this commentary and then we'll move forward tomorrow. Ado tasya swarupam darshayati ahamiti. What is the swarupa of this manamaya kosha is explaining. Yo dehe ahantam aham bhavam gehado gruha kalatra putradishu mamatam. You have ahanta and mamata. I am this, my body. I'm a handsome person. I'm a rich person. I'm an intelligent person. Gehado and house. Griha kalatra putradishu. Griha is house. Kalatra is wife. Putra children. Mamatam mama idam iti abhimanam chakaroti. This is mine. That kind of identification he has. Sa manamaya kosha. That is what you call the manamaya kosha. Aham idam mama idam iti abhimana vishto manamaya kosha. Manamaya kosha, how do you identify it? This is me, this is mine. Me, mine. These two words. Me and mine. I and mine. Wherever it predominantly dominates, that person is living at the manamaya kosha level. Adya tasya anatmatvam darshayati. Now he's explaining why that is not to be equated with atma, kameti. What is? Ma astu chaitanyam abhavat atma pranamaya. Okay, first the Purvapakshi argues, ठीक है, I agree with you. The pranamaya kosha is not atma. Why so? Because there is no chaitanya in it. There is no consciousness, you said. Chaitanya abhavat. Okay, agreed. In deep sleep state, also person is breathing. There is no chaitanya. So, in trees and others, they are also breathing, but there is no consciousness. That, of course, science says consciousness in Vedanta also is everywhere, but it's not very visible. Okay, pranamaya, manomaya kingna syat. Why can't the mind, manomaya kos cannot be the atma? Manasaha satvikangsha bhuta jnana saktika ज्ञान शक्तिकत्वा चेतन तत्व चेतनत्वस्य तस्य विद्यमानत्वात्. First thing, it's born out of the sattvika angsha of these panchabhutas, out of the sattvika angsha. And with manas together. Manas is also out of the sattvika angsha. It's together collectively out of the five sukshma bhutas, and these jnanamaya, the jnanendriyas are individual sukshma bhutas. Together they are the manamaya kosha. Out of the sattvic angsha, number one. Number two, that it is able to think, it is able to feel. Therefore, it has to be considered atma because there is no problem. Manasu hyeva khalu imani bhutani jayante. Tetri Upanishad, Varuna makes a statement at one point that mana itself is atma. Meditate like that. He's helping the student gradually go above and above, accept intermediate truths and refute them, and ascend to a higher realization. Okay, so in manasi eva khalu imani bhutani jayante. With the mind we are born. Because of mind we do things. Because of mind, whatever we achieve in our life, that is the atma. Ityadina tasya janmadi karanatvam api uktam. And this mind, without the mind, child is born. Do you treat as a human being or anything? What do you do with it if it's just a living being? If it doesn't have the ability to think or anything, you say, what is wrong with it? Marana kale truna jalokanyayana jivatma manasa dehantaram sambhavya swatmanande dehantaram nayati. There is something called Truna Jalukanaya. You have this cricket or these insects which are sitting on the grass. They go to the tip of the grass and jump over to the next grass and move on. Similarly, the Jivatma abandons one body-mind complex and assumes another. The Sukshma, the Linga Sarira moves. Yeah? And the Sukshma Sarira moves. You have Stula Sarira, you have Sukshma Sarira. A Sukshma Sarira carries all your Papa Punyas. It goes. So you call it Atma. What is Sthiti hetum sarva vyavahara manasa eva vidam karoti? Because of the mind that you are making sense of whatever is going around with you. And sarva sanga parityagopi manasa eva kartabhya. And with the help of mind only, you can, you know, nullify all the entanglements you have in your life. Is mana eva manushyanam karanam bandha mokshayoh. This is the, the Upanishad. One of these Upanishad says, it's called Atma Bindu Upanishad, or yeah, that Amrita Bindu Upanishad. It says, Mana eva manushyanam karanam bandha mokshayoh. Is mind itself is the cause of both your bondage and liberation. So why can't you accept mana is Atma? He says no. Ato mana eva Atma bhavitum arati iti sankam nirakaroti. That giving the positive arguments, he says, yeah, don't get super excited. It's not Atma. Why so? Kamadi avastaya, kama krodhadi vikar avastaya. When you have kama, krodha, lobha, moha, whatever, modulation of your emotional frame of mind. Bhranto aham idam mama idam. You have such identification. You realize it when you become older. Yeah. Many of your friends that you were obsessing about, at one point in time, you call them up, you're not well. They're busy with their children, grandchildren. Are they going to come? Once in a blue moon. So you slightly loosen up, even with your wife, even with your children. You get a realization, the end of the day, whether you're married or you're single. Of course, these are powerful institutions. They give you a framework for love and interaction and everything. But ultimately, you have accepted that your spiritual existence is not to be limited by the existence of all these people around you, and you need not feel either enhanced or restricted because of the surrounding of the emotional content of your relationships. Slowly you realize that these are evanescent, these are temporary and transient in nature. Therefore, in Bhranto aham idam mama idam iti avadharya vastusu tadatmya bhavam apannaha. You have tadatmya bhava. Meri Jaan. The mother says, my son is my life. Anything happens to my son, I'll commit suicide. A lot of people do it for their girlfriend, husband, friends, their cricket. They have tadatmya. That is myself. That is a false identification. Tataha now so atma manomaya kosha. The manomaya kosha is not Atmanaha nirvikaratpasya. Do you know what is the Swarupa of Atma? Is nirvikara. Mana, all the time vikari, all the time undergoing changes. How can it be when it's nirvikala, nishkala, nitya suddha buddha swabhava? That's what the Upanishads say. How can you reduce Atma to the mind? Sometimes you go mad. A lot of people are mentally ill if you go to any sanatorium. So, Atma is mad. Atma cannot be mad. They are as pure as us. Somebody has disease. The Annamaya Kosha is diseased. So the Atma is diseased. No. The Pranamaya Kosha is very weak. The Atma becomes weak. Similarly, the mind sometimes is happy, sometimes is sad. But this Atma is always Ananda Swarupa. So how can you reduce it to the Manamaya Kosha? Atmanaha nirvikarattvasya shruti siddhataya is nirvikara. Atma is nirvikara, Manomaya Kosha is vikari. Tad virodhena vikaravan manamya koshaha na atma iti bhavaha. The one fundamental ground as to how that is refuted is that manamya kosha is ever trapped in different kinds of changes, and you cannot reduce it to the Atma Tattva. We'll carry forward tomorrow, and thanks for joining. Those who haven't joined will be able to listen to the YouTube. And let me stop the. Yeah. So I've stopped